Here we are back at the Laythe base. I'm going to prep the base to go on a mission to one of Jool's other satellites. So some of the things need to get done at the base that I just never did. I've landed a lot of stuff on the surface but never did some of the things that needed to do to bring the base all together. So here's the refueler droid. This is designed to refuel my VTOL single stage to orbit that landed most recently at the base. It landed and broke 2 wheels when it landed and 3 of its landing legs, so it's just been sitting there waiting for a Kerbal to come rescue it, repair the wheels basically. After a long drive to base, I get to base, and I'm going to immediately dump my fuel into the ship so that I can set about refueling the droid the next opportunity I get. That Kerbal, by the way, that repaired the wheels, he was dropped off by this VTOL ship at that air probe, because that air probe was left on the beach from when it was first dropped off by the Star Yacht in the very first mission to Laythe. Alright, so now he's done with his mission, he repaired the wheels, so now he's going to fly back to base. Right here, my wheels break on takeoff, those crappy yellow wheels, so I need to land on parachutes. I almost tumbled in the air, I was able to recover. But with no wheels, those wheels break all the time. So I'm landing on the parachutes so that I can repair the wheels. I'm really close to the base. I'm just going to drive over. I'm about 50 kilometers, not even, no, like 25 kilometers away. So I'm just going to drive right over there real quick. I left this part in the video to explain why the base needs to be prepped. And it's kind of nice to include all this stuff because you've seen all these things land on the surface, but you never saw me do anything with them and what they were designed to do, basically. Because the videos that included them were so long already that they never got to see them in action. So here's these little air probes. As you can see, they can fly and drive and carry a Kerbal, and they have a probe core so they can operate by themselves as well. So they're pretty super useful, basically. There's one more off on another beach that's fully functional. The 2 that are at the base here are, most of their solar panels are broken. They got destroyed in the flight. But anyways, the base is being prepped to go to one of the satellites. So what I need is I need to bring all the Kerbals to base, and I need to refuel the VTOL to full fuel. Which the first part of that was just bringing the refueling droid to base. And the other part of that is I'm going to drain the fuel from the other single stage orbit ship right here. You can't see it right now, but in that Kraken video, you got to see it get destroyed. Oh, I got really lucky here. I landed on the engines, but they didn't come off. It was really gentle, because I took the gear up like a half second too early. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm heading off to the northern part of this island because, again, one of the first landers from the Star Yacht way back in the first mission, on its trip over here, it got hit by the Kraken and tipped over. Alright, so the the refueler droid was docked to the base there so it could drain the fuel out of that crashed, or that ship that's destroyed by the Kraken, and now that the fuel is all out of it, I'm going to decouple it and drive the base away from it because I'm afraid of it blowing up more and I don't want it to destroy my main piece of the base here. That debris kind of worried me, but I knew I could repair that wheel as long as it didn't come off. But I'm really lucky I moved that away. Alright, so back to the VTOL now. I'm landing at the crashed pod to rescue the 2 Kerbals here. You can see I have 1 pilot in the 3-manned capsules, so I have 2 seats open. This ship's super useful because it works so well in an air atmosphere. Oh, what I do is I use the smoke to figure out which way I'm going, because the ground has very little texture, so it's hard to tell which way you're moving without looking at your little yellow dot. So I use the smoke to kind of steer myself over basically I was just steering over the site. I pop the parachutes and then I burn the engines to slow me down even more because the landing's really rough. I bounce around quite a bit, but luckily I'm safe. So now I'm really close, so you can see the crash site. So I'm going to run the 2 guys over here. They've been living in this tipped over site for about a month. And they're ready to head over to the main base where there's lots of space for them. A little cinematic view of him running over there. This VTOL plane is super tricky to fly. I wish I had brought the one with wheels. Sadly, the one that got destroyed by the Kraken was the single-staged orbit rover 3-man ship, which would have been a lot more useful. Because it could take off horizontally, which is fine on Laythe, there's nothing in my way. Alright, back to base. Flying all the way back, shifted some fuel around to balance the plane around again and keep I'm going to fly like a helicopter the whole way there. It'll make landing easier. It just is a little slower. So here's a little clip. Alright, going to bring her in for a nice gentle landing back at base with all 12 Kerbals now. From 3 missions to Laythe, I have 12 Kerbals and a lot of ships and 1 destroyed ship. And then right when I land there, you can see that that single stage orbit ship starts exploding again. So I'm really glad I moved the base away from it. Alright, I'm going to do a little check here to make sure nothing got destroyed by the debris. You can see that the ship got all destroyed. It's still blowing up even a little bit. Again. Alright, now I'm trying to find the crew. Okay, the crew's all alive. Their pod's fine. The droid is fine. Everyone's fine. Alright, so here's a clip of what's to come in the next episode. The space train. Alright, here's some bloopers. As you can imagine, I didn't get everything right on the first landings. Here's one of my first attempts. I think it took me about 4 tries to get this landing at the crash site right. What I learned is that because with air intake engines, when you cut them, they still thrust for about 2 seconds after you cut them because they have auxiliary thrusts to come out from the air, I guess. Kind of cool that they did that. And I learned the hard way with this plane that because you bounce on the gear, that if you're at like a hover thrust, the gear bounce forces your plane back up and it'll flip you over. So here's some of my crashes. Pretty sad when I worked so hard to like kill all of my velocity and hover like that for a second so that I could land really nice and gently. So my logic here was, alright, I'll just pop the parachutes because they're gonna, basically I figured the parachutes are just free braking. They're saving me fuel, right? Why not use them? And they make me wobble a little bit because the parachutes and the engines work a little bit contradictory to each other since one's braking and the other one's thrusting. But that's fine. I'm going really slow, so it's no big deal. But I cut the engines, you'll see right there. Cut the engines. No, I didn't cut the engines that time. That time I left the engines on. I think the bad frame rate or something. I was just not paying attention or... Oh, you know what I thought? I thought the hover... Because that was my first attempt. I thought the hover... Since I was falling, right? I thought the hover thrust would just land me on the ground with the engines thrusting and I would just land gently. I didn't even think to cut the engines because I wasn't thrusting them enough. The parachutes with the engines were still... I was still falling. So it never even occurred to me to cut the engines, actually, the first time. So now I've learned. Now I know I need to cut the engines. So I've already picked the guys up. You can see there's 3 Kerbals now in the cab, and I'm landing back at base now. And you can see the base is right there, so my frame rate is about 5, because I'm super close to base. But my landing looks about perfect. I'm going to do a little jiggle here and freak out for a second. But I figure at this point I'm doing good. Like, I'm going nice and slow. Everything looks good. Nothing to be too concerned about. I kind of went backwards a little bit there. I mean, I'm wasting a bit of fuel, but no real big concerns. I still have quite a bit of fuel at the base. And once I land, I can slowly hover the plane anywhere I want, like closer to base. So I just kind of want to touch down. I pop the parachute again, that's free braking. Nice landing, and then you can see I cut the thrust there, but still flipped over. Anyways, next episode will be a good one. Trips to Jool satellite.